Okay, first of all, the obvious thing, this movie's way too fucking long.
Way.
It was long. It
Why
was
the
long.
fuck is this movie so
I
long?
had to watch it in 2 nights.
Yeah.
It was trying to be a TV series, but it didn't.
This is an interesting time capsule. I kept going, when did this come out? 1995. Fuck, what was I doing in 1995? I was writing the first versions of YabtM in 1995. This movie, it's like the internet, this movie came out right before the internet was a thing. And
this is 1.0 stuff.
Well, yeah, but I mean, obviously the technology, it's like I went back and watched the first 20 minutes of Brainstorm, Douglas Trumbull's movie from 1980,
which resembles rather strongly.
It's
amazing what you can do with a 2400 baud modem.
But right,
record people's brains.
John, we were having a conversation 6 months ago about Avatar or something, and we were talking about the earnestness of Jim Cameron's scripts and how they work for him when he's making a movie like Titanic or Avatar. And I would argue that the earnestness of Jim Cameron's scripts works against him in this instance, because he's trying to be something totally different. And his tin ear for dialogue it weirdly works in some instances, but it does not work here. And I thought the support, like, is another of those things. I didn't think Ralph Fiennes was very good as the lead here.
He was terrible.
Angela Bassett, a little less so. I thought the supporting cast was better. Mm-hmm. Michael Winnicott, I think that's his name.
It was a huge, interesting cast, I have to admit.
Yeah, I had the same note, the great supporting cast again here.
I was going to have a moment on Juliette Lewis, because we were talking the other day in the chat about musicians that go on to do acting and how that's a really long list. And there's some very good examples of musicians that have made that transition very well. And then I was thinking about actors who went on to try to do musicians. I think Jared Leto is probably the most successful one.
Yeah.
But my personal favorite has always been Juliette and the Licks, who, if you've never heard her solo, her records that she did with that punky band, I don't know how it's almost like a grunge punk band. I'm watching her in this movie kind of warm up for her stage persona that she would later go on to do with the Licks. I watched those shows, like her in that band. She was never doing pantomime. Like, it was the real thing. Wow. And I think she's great in this. And I thought the music when she was on screen was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. But apparently
Charlotte Gainsborough is very good at that too.
Right. But there's just something about this whole thing that, like, it also doesn't feel very real. Like, it looks expensive. It's well shot. But I didn't buy it. I didn't buy any of it. And maybe that's because we've had 25 years to kind of see how technology actually evolved. And maybe that's sort of feeding into my perspective. It's like watching Johnny Mnemonic, which came out the same year. This is what we thought the future was going to be, and we're going to make a movie. It's sort of like a pulpy, melodrama-y pop movie. Like I was really surprised this movie did not end in a shootout in a warehouse, because that's how these kinds of movies in the mid-90s tended to end. And
They definitely drew out this end like it was one of those.
Well, mind you, I thought that the technology in 2000 versus 95 is not much different. There were no cell phones. There was all imaginary technology.
There's cell phones in this movie.
I think there's a whiff.
The giant ones.
Let me just close on this.
They're not even that big.
Closing thought is, I think there's a whiff on the tech aspect on this, in much the same way that I was very disappointed with how Spielberg's Minority Report ended. You've got this great setup. Here is this life-changing technology that can alter all these kinds of things. And it just, by the end, they just sort of devolved into the kind of movie.
Good guys and bad guys.
So, not to make this a Minority Report thing, but that the actual short story stops when they put him in the prison. Like, there is nothing that happens after that is from the original story. Also,
Spielberg loves to add.
No doubt.
Yeah. Also, Philip K. Dick agreed with you.
Yeah. He adds everyone's constitutional rights at the end of Minority Report. I'll give you that. One thing about going back to Juliette Lewis is like one thing about this film is that this still here is from the one I found illegally, which is 2.35 to 1 is scope, right? This is filmed in Super 35.
Yes.
Right. And they actually put out about 12 years ago a HD sized one, which is 1.77 to 1. And so it reveals a lot of stuff in the bottom, right? And Juliette Lewis is basically running around naked the entire film.
Yeah,
that's what I watched.
Her dress is see-through, yeah.
Yeah, I dress to see through. It's pretty bold. It's
like
a very bold idea. That's the thing. Very
well, she does. I mean, she does full on nudity in the bathroom scene anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I thought that this
high def doesn't help noticing this descender cable here, by the way.
Yeah,
it just goes all the way up and down.
Yep.
I thought, well, this movie came out when this is the year I graduated from high school. Wow. And I think I kind of skipped. I mean, I saw it, but I was so trying to get in. I was just getting into like Train Spotting and Pulp Fiction and all these like sort of movies that were, I don't know, kind of just really revelatory at the time. And I thought this one was kind of messy, and I still think it kind of is.
It's a messy. Yeah.
But I also think that like one positive thing though, I liked it a lot better watching it this time. And I think this is a great premise. I really do. I really think this story, or at least the premise of it, is quite strong.
It's a good thesis, but they needed to follow
right. It's a great thesis. And again, and I put one note here, and maybe this will ring true for some of you. I felt that this supporting cast is so good, but they don't have a ton to work with. It's sort of like they're underusing a lot of amazing people in this movie.
That makes sense.
And I put in my note.
Fichtner needs to be in this a lot more.
Oh, dude, he's one of my favorite actors.
They're kind of one-note characters in some ways.
D'Onofrio at least has a lot more to do.
Yeah, but they're both just corrupt cops.
But
Fichtner mostly just stands to the side while things happen.
D'Onofrio is just glowering the whole time.
Remember him?
But they're both such amazing actors.
Also, remember him in Go? Oh my God, he was the best part of that movie.
Well, I put in my notes, I put the actors here. In some movies, I think this is a movie that's like this. In some movies, you get so little sort of dialogue for certain characters that the characters are actually almost just playing the plot and advancing it than actually existing and being characters, like being people in the movie. And I feel like this movie is kind of like that.
Why is this movie so wet?
I know
everything in this movie is wet.
Lewis's hair never dries out the entire film.
It's Los Angeles, which we know never rains.
It's so wet.
Look how wet Vincent D'Onofrio is behind Scott.
It's real dry. Who's that dude to the right of you, to the left of you, or the right of you in the background, Chris?
That's Michael Wincott. He's from The Crow and a number of other things.
I love him.
He is a very clear face, a very graspy voice. He was like,
you saw the fucking
yes, I did
list that I posted.
I know. It's like an amazing background. He's been everything.
He's awesome.
So Sizemore has a lot of fun. I think, you do get to eventually you get to the fallacy of the talking killer trope, which we've seen.
Is there a movie where Sizemore is like a good guy? Does that exist?
Black Hawk Down.
Black Hawk Down and The Relic.
Well, what about Private Ryan?
Yeah, Private Ryan.
So there are a few, because I was thinking, and I was like, if you see Sizemore in a movie, you just know that he is not going to be the good guy. Well, no, it's just not going to happen.
You see Sizemore, you realize he's going to be like this rough talking dude who's kind of coming from the heart. And
if someone is going to betray you, it's going to be Sizemore in the movie, dude.
Michael Madsen.
Or Michael Madsen. Yeah,
he has his best line.
When I was really young, I thought they were the same guy.
Yeah, so did some LA cops who beat the shit out of Michael Madsen because they thought he was Tom Sizemore, and they were mad at him for beating up Heidi Fleiss.
Oh
God. But there's a line from Private Ryan where Sizemore says, if you find out you're doing this kind of thing, his mother would come back over here and beat the shit out of you. And he's like, he has this kind of like this weird kind of like homespun American kind of virtuousness that comes in a lot of his films. It was weird because
everything.
Yeah, he was. That's why he's so likable.
I do. I love him and everything too. I'm just saying he's always.
He has his heart out of sleeve in all of his stuff, and it's just, it's a shame he didn't. He fucked up so bad in his personal life, but that's.
I thought the music.
Did you ever buy his wig? I never bought his wig. Once.
No, because you're not supposed to. Because you get to the end and it turns out it's a wig.
Can we talk about that scene for a second? So when she grabs the wig and pulls it off, or when he gets the wig pulled off, and you realize it's got the thing under it.
Mm-hmm.
What did they close the loop on? Okay, so do we assume then that he's the guy doing all the raping?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't too clear. I'll give you that.
He's the one. He's the one who held the knife. He's the one who held the knife up to him.
But also, it's telling you that this guy wears it 24/7 because he's always has that hair on. So he doesn't take it off. He's been recording his entire life, dude.
That's pretty
and
weird.
doing all this crazy
He's
shit.
a vlogger.
They should have explored that more.
Well,
That was kind of prescient in a lot of ways.
Also, I struggle a little bit with like, okay, so he's basically leaving tapes for fines to find for why?
To set him up. The whole point of this is to set him up as the killer in the long run.
I got that because he literally says that in the speech he gives, but none of the actions leading up to that. All right, well, I'm not. It doesn't matter.
Also, at the very end of the film, I was very pleased by how much money they spent. They must have spent a fortune on confetti. There was,
and extras.
And extras. I was going to say, that's before CG.
Extras.
Those crowds are real people, dude.
It was like that. That was the real fucking thing, man. It was like impressive how big that stuff was.
It made me
also real effective unarmed crowd beating the cops. Like
that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
That like I like that it starts with the little kid jumping on the one cop and then everybody just jumps in. It's just like, all right, we're doing this.
Do you think that was too on the nose, though? I think it's too much Rodney King / like LAPD or bad.
No, but that was the point.
Well, like, and it was the point. It was the point, but it wasn't very well executed, I think, in some ways. It's just a thought.
I don't know, but both these movies are about how shitty the cops in LA are.
I'll give you that.
There's no question. I mean, I've seen all of her movies, and I think this one and maybe the Widowmaker are probably the two weakest. There are themes in this movie that she's like, who else saw Detroit?
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny thinking about that movie watching this. Because she definitely carried pieces of this to that movie.
I do want to say that it's interesting. Going back to talking about the technology in here and the recording and all that stuff, is this becomes a significant plot point in the video game Cyberpunk 2077, and I like this movie less having played that, which does a really good job with that story. Like what this kind of technology actually does in society is way more fleshed out in that.
I've seen Black Mirror episodes that
that's
this idea than this movie did. But
yeah,
that has the benefit of,
again, it's a good, like Jim said, it's a good thesis, but they didn't take it.
Well, they're dipping their toes in
places.
Kind of this is before the Matrix, and so they're kind of like getting used to the idea about virtual reality and things like that. So they're kind of like, it was getting used. Hollywood used the idea of this kind of thing happening. Well, but because remember, like Brainstorm was kind of like a breakthrough in that respect.
It's the same. It's literally the same thing. I'm gonna record what I'm experiencing, and then you can put that on and experience what I experienced.
But half that film was actually showing how the technology was so awkward. These gigantic tapes of like hollow tapes you gotta thread through the thing.
Yeah, but by the end of the movie, it's the size of the thing that's in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. But
the tiny little thing that just fits over the top of your head. I don't know. Again, like I find it
Brainstorm. They can actually edit the tapes too. Right?
What was that?
They can edit the tapes. They can edit the tapes in this, but it apparently it happens in such a way that people notice, because he calls it out at the beginning. He's like, well, I'm gonna have to cut out the guy dying at the end because people don't want to buy the guy dying. You know, and then his buddy's like, no, that's actually what they want to buy.
Yeah,
like
that's the best part.
What I like about that, they show that when the things in it breaks up. I used to work in a place that did videotapes. That's exactly the kind of breakup you see at the end of a D1 tape. D2 digital, Sony digital tape. That kind of like the little tiny triangular breaks that happen.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That kind of effect was actually really well done. You know, so it's just
you can see that on mini DV as well.
Yeah, well, those are bigger blocks, but the D2s had little tiny blocks like that. So that was kind of nice, you know.
They had to build the whole first-person rig from scratch for this movie.
I read about that. That is extremely impressive. The story on how she got that to work was extremely impressive to think about.
Yeah,
I like how maybe it's just
they didn't have little tiny cameras.
Nope.
Right.
Nope,
I'm showing my like age or something, but I like how vicious some of the dialogue was in this movie, though, because a lot of movies nowadays don't have. I mean, everybody was calling everybody every name in the book in this movie.
Yes,
just as like one-liners. It was awesome. Raw. It was like every time it was like "fuck you, bitch," and like or "you motherfucker," and it was like she I put it in the chat like I love when she's all, "You pussy whip like dumb motherfucker." She calls him that.
Yeah,
And I was like, that's amazing. Like I love all that kind of, because I think nowadays in movies they don't do it because they're like scared of offending people.
Yeah, they run it through the the censors.
Well, you would, yeah. I mean, you would never get, like, this was a big budget Hollywood movie. You would never get away with that.
And I also, I said earlier in the chat, this is actually kind of a Valentine to Los Angeles too. There's like some beautiful LA scenes. There's 6th Street Bridge, and there's
yes. But do you know what else came out this year?
What?
Heat. Michael Mann's Heat.
Thank you very much.
So that's an opposite Valentine to LA in a lot of ways.
No,
My friend I think Heat 2 is out in novel form right now.
And
they're casting for a movie, apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, he's going to make it.
Was a very good year for movies. I don't think this is one of them.
Well, the argument is that and back then in '95, whenever they're making this, LA was the center of the universe because it was like Rodney King, the LA riots, the O.J. Simpson, the Northridge quake, and all the attention in the world was focused on LA back then.
Not Hollywood, LA.
Yeah, LA in general.
But Chris is right. There were so many good movies that came out that year. Oh my God.
Yeah, LA knew back then it was an important city, and so it shows in this film that this is an important city. That's the thing. It's no backwater.
Yeah, and they actually did a really good job of showing you sort of this chaos, right? That looks like it looks a little bit like, I mean, just slightly like Blade Runner, and some of it.
A lot of shots from inside cars looking at like tanks along the side.
Right.
Like, that shit was good.
Dude, I was down there during the LA after the Rodney King riots, and you saw that shit. You saw burned up houses and tanks in the streets and shit like that. It was
this movie feels.
It was not too far from reality at all.
Yeah.
There's instead of releasing the tape, he gives the tape to the cop. The releasing of the tape will lead to probably the next movie I will pick after this, which is Southland Tales. That's where Southland Tales starts,
dude. You're gonna pick the bad Dave or Kelly movie. What's his name? Richard Kelly.
This is all part of a theme.
It's the director of Donnie Darko.
I'm carrying through a theme here, and the theme is strange apocalypses. Like we're continuing down the strange apocalypse road.
I got you.
Pick Hardware.
I'm gonna pick what I want to pick. Like,
okay. All right.
And a lot of them are gonna be around the same time frame in terms of when they were made too. Because
this movie feels very big. It's just very expensive looking. It ended up a kind of a small story that didn't
felt like less than some of its parts, kind of.
Well, again, like the length is way too much. Let's cut the slow motion at the end in half, please.
Yeah. Also, Jim hasn't a corner yet. Jim, take your corner.
Yeah, it took me a while to get into it, and then when I finally got into it, I lost interest in it because I was thinking about other movies.
It's funny because I'm normally the person who jumps in on length on some of these things, and this movie just doesn't feel that long to me.
It took me 2 nights. I had to break it up.
Length is a subjective thing.
It doesn't move slowly. I'll give you that, Tad. I don't think it does feel, but I kept like, I watched it in one sitting, but I kept pausing it to see how much time was left in the picture. Yeah. Because I was getting kind of
there are a couple of times where you're like, I'm surprised this movie isn't over yet.
Exactly. And then I was always surprised to see how much time was still left. I was all, oh my God, I still have 42 minutes of this fucking thing. What's going on?
Yeah, you actually probably could have cut after Sizemore falls off the building. Yeah. Like that you probably you would lose a lot in terms of like the production value and that kind of stuff. But like I get why they kept it.
But then they wouldn't have. But then she wouldn't have her racist white cop commentary.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, you kind of do, but
you do. Oh no, you do when they kill Jericho, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 2 in there. Yeah.
But no, what you don't have is and again, like it's the punch I wish it hadn't pulled is you see what happens when everyone rises up against the cops in this. Like, just keep going with that. Like, I think if that doesn't get resolved so neatly at the end, this is a very different movie. Like, and that to me feels like Cameron's hand coming in a little bit.
Maybe
it's like, no, we got to pull back. We can't go. Everything's got to be neat. Everything's got to be neat in James Cameron's world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wish they would have paid a little more attention to, because I was a real hip hop head, and like the Jericho single that they would play, he was never actually rapping. He was just like talking over it, which rappers do
back then.
Typically at the beginning though, or at the end of the song. And I knew that beat too, because it's been sampled by everyone from Arrested Development to like Lil Bruce and like, but I wish they would have like written a verse for him and actually had him rapping, because that just would have been more authentic. Kind of like Juliet's songs in the club were quite good for that kind of style or whatever.
Yeah, they're written by PJ Harvey.
Right. Okay. So there you go. Like just hire, hire Ice Cube to write one verse, dude, and have the dude spit it, and it would have just sold the whole thing for me. But I know that's a small thing, but I
think they could have done a better job propping that character up to be as big a deal as he was supposed to be.
You could take 10 minutes out of other parts of this movie and give it to Jericho. Like you could absolutely do
as
that.
much as the whole plot line hinges on the cops kill. It's like the cops killing, like,
and that guy is a good actor.
So it's like the cops killing the Weekend, like somebody that at that level.
Or Kendrick
did a good.
Also, do you recognize that actor? He was the guy in Showgirls. A couple of years later,
he's also Rocket in Colors.
Oh, really?
First time I saw that guy.
You talking about the Jericho?
The Rocket? No, wait, no. He's the Rocket is Don Cheadle. No, he's the Blood.
Right. This guy who played the Jericho in this was actually the James in the guy in Showgirls, the guy who is in love with Nomi. Yeah,
it's a lot of things.
Well, yeah, and he was also in. He's so good. Well, he was also, of course, in Salt and Sea. We just talked about.
I agree.
All right, to the cards.
I do what I never do with these fucking things.
Wow.
Well, that's what I did for the last one. I'm gonna get. I like this a little bit.
I'm kind of the same way. I'm kind of like, I had to watch it in 2 nights, and I couldn't kind of like.
It's been a while. It's been a while since I rewatched this, and I like it less than I did when I watched it the last time.
I actually liked it better than I did the first time.
Weirdly enough, I thought it was too convoluted, and just kind of hard time kind of.
Yeah, it's convoluted for sure.
Yeah.